All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are going to be looking at our top 10 wide receivers for the class of 2020 as the draft heats up a few months away now. I don't know about you, Nick, but this is a very top-heavy receiving class. I don't think it's a over-the-top great one. I don't think it's as deep as some of the ones in years past, but overall, I think this is a very nice class.
Yeah, it's definitely not as deep as classes that we've had in the past 5 years or so, but there is a lot of talent in this class, and there's definitely some names towards the bottom list that could be really boom or bust potential. And like you said, the top is very heavy with this class. There's a lot of really good talented players, a couple guys with injury concerns, and it's really interesting to see how they're going to pan out.
Yeah, looking at the honorable mentions on screen here, I think the one name that stands out most is George Pickens. A lot of people are probably going to be confused on that. Me personally, and you can add on to this. I like his size, but overall his explosiveness is not impressive. He does have that torn ACL, which I won't hold it too much against him because two guys that made the top 10 have that same injury. But Pickens was never really productive. I think the only presence he really provides is, as a deep threat, 50-50 ball guy. I think with his size, he can win some inside routes, but overall, I'm not blown away as a prospect, mainly probably because he didn't have the year we expected because of that injury. I definitely think that potential is there as a boom or bust prospect, though.
Yeah, George Pickens, of course, is 6'3", 200 pounds. He's physical. He can get up there, get those 50-50 balls, but he does lack a little bit. He can be out physical by stronger DBs who are trying to defend him. He struggles a little bit and definitely not as explosive as you'd like in a wide receiver if you're taking him very early in the draft. Doesn't quite have that speed that you're looking for in a first round draft pick. Definitely had concerns with the injury. Obviously, this year there were some games. He missed a ton of time this year, and at times he looked kind of anonymous on the field for Georgia when he was playing and wasn't really involved in their passing game. So I'm a little concerned with Pickens, but like you said, there are some other players on this list who do have injury concerns as well. But if someone takes Pickens in the early third round, they could get a really good value pick there.
Yeah, overall, coming into the year, I felt that Pickens, if he was healthy, he would have probably won the Blitnikoff Award or at least been in contention for it with JT Daniels under center. Of course, Daniels didn't play much, neither did Pickens, so that didn't even come close to happening. But I was really high on him coming into the year, so I don't want people to think that I'm holding too much against him because I'm a big fan of his. Boomer bust prospect, though, is what I'm labeling him as. A few other guys that really stand out. Kelvin Austin from Memphis, a versatile guy, is really standing out. Khalil Shakur, this guy is a complete speedster, very twitchy, short area quickness. He's a little undersized, but overall, I like his explosiveness, his ability to find the football. I think Shakur, he really impressed at the Senior Bowl. I think he's going to be a high riser as well.
Yeah, he was a productive athlete. He had some good years for Boise State and was a really talented player. I like this size. He's a little undersized, but I think he has that speed that makes up for it. He had some good games this year. He's very talented, like you said, had a good Senior Bowl. So he might start to rise up some people's draft boards. He's kind of low on a lot of people's boards right now, maybe looking like a fifth round right now, but I think he can rise throughout the next couple of weeks as we get closer to draft day. He has big playability. They weren't, his whenever his number was called, he did make a big play, but he is lacking that elite speed that you would like in a wide receiver.
That's where he makes up for it with the twitchiness, the shared area quickness. That's where he really strives the most. And I think the last guy to touch on, Justin Ross, he's probably going to be a third or fourth round pick. That's a first round talent. That spinal injury that caused him to miss all of 2020. It's obviously a big concern for some of these NFL teams, but Ross is an overall prospect, really good player.
Yeah, it's a shame that Ross picked up that spinal injury because he was so talented at Clemson before the injury, especially the year that they beat Alabama in the national championship game. He had a really good night, and he's a very talented player. So it is a shame that he has this injury problems, but I really like his route running. I think he's a talented player in that regard. And I think if they take a gamble on him later in the draft, they might get really good value out of him as long as he can stay healthy. I'm definitely concerned with that. Like I said, the spinal injury, that's a nasty injury. But he did look good at times this year and had some decent moments in what was a pretty poor season for Clemson overall. Talented wide receiver. Someone's going to get a good pick out of him, hopefully.
Yeah, he was the only real reliable pass catcher for a Clemson passing attack. It was pretty lackluster to say the least. Kicking things off at 10 though, Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama, nearly 1,500 yards, 18 yards per catch, with Jake Bentley throwing him the football. Bentley comes over from Utah, previously South Carolina. They had a pretty special connection all year. I like the size Tolbert has, 6'3", 195. He's really strong hands. His burst off the line of scrimmage. I think he's more explosive than Pickens, so that's why I give him. That's why we kind of agreed to give him the 10th spot over George. Yards after catch, he's really impressive too. What do you like about Jalen Tolbert?
Yeah, so Tolbert's a former two-star recruit at a high school in the state of Alabama. He kind of really starting to burst on the scene after this last season. He did, like you said, almost 1,500 yards receiving. Very good after the catch. Can make some really good runs after getting the ball. Kind of can beat some defenders here and there. He had a good year at South Alabama, who had a bit of an average year. He's not the best of a route runner, which he really work on that, and hopefully that would be something he can kind of develop throughout the next couple of weeks and throughout the years. But I really like him as a sort of a late third round pick kind of guy. Could be a talented wide receiver to pick up and can definitely develop into a number one receiving option in an offense at some point.
Yeah, route running is certainly one of his negatives. I think drops as well. I believe he had 7 this past season. Unless I'm talking about somebody else, I'm pretty sure Tolbert had that many drops this year. So concentration's obviously got to improve. But I'm not too worried about that. That's probably a good thing if your worst asset as a pass catcher is your drops. I mean, that's something you can easily work on and get better at. Route running, though, he's definitely got that potential to develop into a pretty good pass catcher. Moving to number 9, I think this is one of my favorite prospects in the draft. One of my favorite underrated prospects, that is, 6'5", 211, Christian Watson from North Dakota State. Now, this is an offense that primarily runs the ball, but he was a bright spot in that passing attack. I think he separates very well. He allegedly runs a 4.3, so at that size, I can't wait to see how he tests at the combine. He can win contested catches on the outside. He does a great job of getting open. That's, a QB loves a guy who can get open no matter what. He really impressed at the Senior Bowl. He seemed to catch almost everything that went with him in a variety of ways, in breaking routes, comebacks, back shoulders. He was highly impressive. He's also a bit versatile. He's really good on special teams. Obviously, he's great with speed. I think that 40 time will certainly impress, but he's not exactly twitchy. But he does make up for it with that elite speed. The step up in competition, of course, is something that everyone looks at. Can an FCS guy transition to the NFL? I like this guy overall as a prospect. Are you agreeing with me on Watson on how his potential currently is, or do you think he's just an average player going into the league?
Yeah, so I always get interested when we look at guys who come from FCS programs, especially the top tier programs. Your likes of North Dakota State, JMU, Sam Houston, programs like that. He had a good year there this year, and he's also, like you said, 6'5", about 210, absolutely massive receiver, really talented, really has that height advantage. And honestly, he could also play in the kick return game, maybe some special teams as well. He returned a couple kicks for North Dakota State this year. He has a great home run speed. And if he's on the outside as a wide receiver, he could really beat some guys downfield and make some great plays. Definitely some questions about if he can maybe even run routes, things like that. He's going to need some creativity there. But in general, I think he's a solid player. And like you said, that 6'5" height is just a very physical wide receiver, can make some good plays. And I like him a lot. I think he's going to start to rise throughout the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, much like Tolbert, he's another guy who had a lot of drops in his career. He only had 2 this past season, but over the course of his 4 seasons, he did have somewhere in the double-figure range. He did average 18-plus yards per catch in all 4 years. It wasn't highly productive. Again, though, this style of offense doesn't really allow that, but I think he did very good with the touches he had. I think he had over 800 yards on just 43 catches, so I'd say, mild production, but I'd say it's pretty impressive at the same time. Christian Watson, I can't wait to see who selects him and what he does at the league. I think he's got a lot of potential, and he put on a show at the Senior Bowl. I very much so enjoyed watching him play. Moving to number 8, John Metchie. He's coming off a torn ACL, much like Pickens and his teammate Jameson Williams. Strong hands that Metchie provides. He's not exactly a burner. He's not that quick, but his acceleration, the short area quickness, his change of direction really makes up for not just a smaller frame, but the aforementioned speed. He's not a contested catch guy, but I think when it comes to short intermediate routes, slants, curls, that type of stuff, you could probably even get him involved on screens. I think he performs pretty well in that area of the game. What do you like about Metchie?
Yeah, so Metchie, of course, has played at Alabama with some great wide receivers, for the last couple of seasons. This was the year that he was supposed to really take that step forward and be the number one guy at Alabama. Of course, Jameson Williams, who we'll see later on this list, kind of stepped up and took that number one role this year. But Metchie is a great route runner. He really can beat defenders, mislead them, kind of throw them off their game, make some good plays. He also actually has a really good ability to run after the catch. I think a lot of people don't realize that that is one of his better traits. He can get a little quick if he needs to. He's very good on that inside sort of route. I like his football IQ as well. He has good high IQ while running routes. Very talented in that department. And obviously the injury concerns are there. We're definitely a little worried about that. But in general, I think he's a very talented wide receiver. And again, even with the ACL, some time to be a decent wide receiver. And he had a good game against Tennessee this year. 11 catches, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great stat there. I like Metchie a lot. As an Alabama fan, I always loved him. But I was a little disappointed this year. I thought he could produce a little bit more. But in general, I think he's still a very talented wide receiver.
I believe he still had 1,000 yards. I know he almost had 100 receptions. He would have broke it if he didn't get injured. So I wouldn't say Metchie's season was a disappointment. I'd just say him and Williams complemented each other very well. One guy was because he only averaged like 12, 13 yards per catch or something like that, I believe. and Williams was the big burner downfield. So I think they complemented each other very well. Metchie was a big part of that offense. I personally feel like if him and Williams were both playing in the national title game, that Alabama would have won. That's how important those guys were for that football team. Is what it is, but I do think Metchie, very good season. Number 8 is a pretty tough ranking to give a guy that talented, but it is a very top-heavy receiving class, as we mentioned, and that leads us to number 7, David Bell. This guy, against top 5 opponents this year, they played 2 of them. Purdue beat them both. He had 200-plus yards in both of them. One of the nation's top corners, Matt Hankins, could not hold this guy. He is absolutely ridiculous. Great release off the line of scrimmage. Pretty versatile. He can play in. He can play outside. The balance he has mixed with the separation. I like his route running. It's very smooth. It's very crisp. That's probably his best asset. Average speed. It's not good. It's good. It's not great. But overall, the fundamentals he provides makes up for that lack of speed. I think David Bell is going to be a very good ball player at the next level.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with his route running ability. Like you said, very talented. And that has great football IQ in that regard. He's also got really good ball skills. He made a couple acrobatic catches against Notre Dame this year, a couple against Iowa that were very impressive. I really like that from him. And like you said, he played 2 really good teams this year and played really well against both top 5 teams. Very talented player. Kind of can fit in that X receiver role type of thing. And I really like his talent. He is a high floor, high ceiling prospect. There's definitely some potential here. Right now we slot him at 7. But I think he could be, by the time that we re-rank these in 5 years from now, he can move up to 3, 4 range in terms of these wide receivers. Very talented guy. And I'm interested to see what the team gets him. I'm thinking late 2nd round, early 3rd round.
Yeah, he was tough to cover across the middle of the field. I don't know how many times over his career that he was open running down the middle of the field vertically. So he can not only provide that, but those great ball skills he has allows him to win on the outside. He's not really a great run blocker, and he didn't run many different routes at Purdue because he was in the air raid. But overall, I think David Bell, high upside potential for him. Number 6, Jahan Dotson. He's a big play threat. His speed's not overwhelming by any means, but he has really good hesitation mixed with that quick acceleration that allows him to spring free any moment of the game. Very fluid runner. Not a fan of his size per se, 5'11", 184. It's not terrible, but there's some guys in this class, like Christian Watson, have elite size. So obviously that's not anything that's going to pop off the screen. He's not very elusive in the open field. I don't think he makes many plays at all that I can recall in the open field after the catch. He's got very strong hands. He's not exactly a jump ball guy, but when it comes to being fluid, running good routes, using good moves, I think Dotson checks all the boxes in that category.
Yeah, Dotson's a bit small, like you said, at 5'11", 185. But he definitely is a very fast wide receiver. He ran track in high school, and I just found this out that he actually won a state championship in the 4x100 relay and the long jump in 2016. That's pretty interesting. So he definitely has that type of speed. He can really beat a defense if necessary, absolutely burn someone down on the side of the field. The route running definitely leaves a little bit to be desired. He didn't really drop passes at all. He was a very good pass catcher, had great hands throughout the year. And he's been someone that's been coming up on a couple boards recently. I kind of like where we ranked him here. I think he's a talented player. I think someone could get a really good, nice pick out of him.
Yeah, Dotson, like you said, being a former track star, that leads to good technique, and that's always something you desire when it comes to drafting a prospect. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but you like any extra boxes you can get if a guy was a track star, a former wrestler. Those things are obviously eye-opening to some scouts, some teams. Number 5, Treylon Burks, 6'3", 225. That's pretty ridiculous size. Mixed with the body control he has, the leaping ability, his athleticism, it's insane. Against Alabama, Josh Jobe could not hold him, or could anybody else that covered. I think it was primarily Jobe, but he went for 179, 2 touchdowns, making plays after the catch. This guy made some great plays against Ole Miss, too. I think it was on the same drive. He made back-to-back catches where he showcased that leaping ability, the body control. Burks is really impressive. I've seen some mocks where he goes top 10. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but he's certainly that talented of a player.
Yeah, Burks is my favorite player of the wide receivers in this draft. I absolutely love what he can do on the field. I was at the Alabama game. He made Josh Jobe look absolutely silly out there. Absolutely beat him a few times, and really Jobe struggled against him. He is good with that 50-50 ball because, like you said, the physical, 6'3", 225, that is impressive for a wide receiver. He can really get up there and beat a defender physically for that ball. He is more of a possession receiver. Uses his big frame to kind of shield the ball. And like I said, the 50-50 balls are good for him. That Ole Miss game as well had a great game there. I think top 10 is a little bit of a stretch for Burks. I'm thinking more like 25 to 30 range for him, maybe someone that slots in there. The Chiefs potentially could be a good home for Treylon Burks. I really like him as a wide receiver, and I think that whoever gets him is going to get a really talented player. I really liked what he did at Arkansas this year, and his tape is one of my favorites that I've watched so far of an offensive player. And that frame that he has is very, very strong football. He's great football IQ. He played a lot at Arkansas. He had different type of usage there, and he can really understand the routes and get good spacing, and he can develop to a great player.
Yeah, the long strides make him a pretty good vertical threat as well. I don't think he has eye-popping speed. I'm interested to see how he tests at the combine, but he can be a vertical threat. But straight down the field, that's where he wins those jump balls. But he's very physical. Like Josh Jobs, known as a very physical press corner, and again, he got dominated by a guy who was just more physical than him. So Burks, high upside, brings a lot to the table. Very interested to see how he plays at the next level and what kind of role he, turns out. I don't know if he plays a lot on the inside, but in terms of outside, he has the size and the physicality. So I think that'll probably be his role. Should be interesting. Moving to number 4, Chris Olave, talking about fundamentally sound guys. This is where he checks all the boxes because he's not a home run hitter, not after the catch or streaking downfield, but he's got great hands, concentration, very smooth route runner, high-end football IQ, his acceleration. I think he checks the box in that category. Olave, I know you're not as high as I am on him, but I think this is a really good football player that 4 ranking is pretty deserved.
Yeah, so we went back and forth when we were discussing this earlier. I think I'm not as high as Olave on some people, but like you said, his high football IQ definitely is noticeable. He was Justin Fields' preferred target during that 2020 season. Justin Fields threw to him a lot. I think he has great hands, doesn't really drop the ball a whole lot. Great coordination there, but I just think he lacks a little bit in terms of the speed for me. He definitely could be a good receiver for a team, but I just don't know if he has really the potential to be that great receiver that some people think he can be, like he showed at Ohio State. I'm a little concerned with some of the game film I watched throughout the last couple of weeks. But in general, he's a talented player, and I think that he could be good in the NFL.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from on that, but he was always a very respectable guy that you could throw to on 3rd and 4th downs, and you could count on him. He would make plays anytime you asked him. Some crunch time situations at Ohio State, will he be able to do that at the next level? I like to think he can, but again, you have no idea until he actually does it. He was also, sharing a receiving core with a flora of tremendously talented guys. So we'll see how he can do. I mean, the NFL, you're still going to be surrounded by talented guys, but will he be the focal point of an offense? I wouldn't say so. I can agree with you on that. I think he could be a very solid number 2, though, for a team maybe like the Dolphins in Miami, maybe the Chiefs. We'll see what happens. I think Olave, though, could be very number 2 at the next level.
Yeah, I think Olave would be a great number 2 for a team like you said, Miami. But I just think that some people have him high on their boards and they think he could be a number 1 right out the gate for a team. And I just don't see that in him right now. I think that the 3 guys we have above him have more potential, even with the guy in front of him's injury that we're going to talk about in a second. I'm not as sold on Olave, but I could definitely see where people are coming from.
Yeah, and that guy we're talking about is Jameson Williams at number 3. The speed he has is elite. Obviously, he's not going to run, coming off that torn ACL in the national title game. Just a complete bummer. He looked like he was on the way to have another big game against the Bulldogs. In terms of a slot weapon, he is probably the best one in the class. Stretches the field better than anybody. Has a vertical pass catcher, highly explosive. He's not incredibly physical. He's not exactly big in terms of size, so I don't think he's going to win on the outside consistently. But put him in the slot, maybe match him up with a guy like Michael Thomas on the Saints. And, man, this is going to be scary for some teams. I'm very, very interested to see where Williams goes.
Yeah, I think slot's definitely where he belongs. Nick Saban picked this guy up out of the transfer portal. Nick Saban doing wonders with the new rules of the transfer portal, grabbing Jameson Williams, and he kind of exploded early on to become the number 1 wide receiver for Alabama this year. He looked great in the slot. He has that really good speed. He can quickly snap off routes, can beat defenders if necessary. I really like the way he plays. Of course, we have the concerns with the injury. That was a nasty injury that he got in the national championship. Really disappointing that night because I think, like you said, if he doesn't get injured there, Alabama probably wins the national championship against Georgia just when you have that sort of talented wide receiver on the field like that. But he's a very talented player, and we had him in our mock going to the Saints. I think that would be a perfect fit for him with the way that they're rebuilding right now. I think he'd be a great pick. I talked to a couple of Saints fans; they would love to have him in New Orleans. He is a big play waiting to happen. We saw it in the game against Arkansas this year. He absolutely burst down the field. We saw it against Georgia in the SEC title game. He burst down the field there, and if he didn't get ejected against Auburn, he could have made a bunch of plays there too. And also another thing to note, of course, is he did play special teams this year, defense and offense. He made a couple of tackles. I don't know if you remember in the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
He made a crazy tackle on a punt return that was very impressive, and the tackle he made in the Auburn game that got him ejected.
Yeah.
Targeting rule. So he is kind of has a bunch of different roles you can play him in, and maybe he can start returning kicks for a team in the NFL early on. Who knows?
Yeah, he's the most intriguing player to me in the draft, even as a USC fan of Drake London here coming up in the rankings. I'm very excited to see where Williams goes, more than probably anybody in this entire class. Very excited to see where he goes. 1,500 plus yards, 15 touchdowns. Was a Blitnikoff Award finalist. Williams, this guy's going to be fun at the next level. Hopefully the injury, everything checks out. As far as I'm concerned, he's expected to make a full recovery. We'll see if it has any long-term effect. Moving to number 2, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave's counterpart at Ohio State. Athletic freak, his leaping ability. Just talked about Traylon Burks. This guy's is ridiculous. Of course, there's that picture of him against Clemson where he puts on a ridiculous vertical. I don't know how high he was jumping, but of course that's the one clip everyone's going to refer to. But that's not the only one. He made continuous, impressive plays. The focus he has to go up with that leaping ability and make a play. I like his first step. It's pretty great. I wouldn't say he's a burner by any means. I'd say he's very twitchy, very dynamic as an athlete. Strong hands mixed with it. I think that twitchiness allows him to be a good route runner. I think at the next level, I think a team like Cleveland, kind of like we just talked about Williams, they need a slot receiver. Williams, he played a lot on the outside, but I think Wilson, that is, he played a lot on the outside, but he can make plays in the slot too. Wilson's another one of those receivers I'm incredibly high on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how he tested the combine. Like you said, that photo of him against Clemson making that jump. He's 6 foot 192. It'll be interesting to see what he can get in his vertical leap at the combine because that man can get up there for sure. And I think he'd be a great slot receiver, like you said. He'd be really good in the RPO type of games, an offense that runs something similar to that. I really liked his film this year at Ohio State. I think he had a lot of good games. I'm looking at Nebraska, Oregon, Minnesota, a couple other, especially Minnesota, that opening game on that Thursday night. That was a good game from him. I like his separation. He can make some plays, like you said, in the slot. He has very good football IQ, very good open field instincts, can beat players if necessary. I don't think the perimeter role is going to work for him in the NFL, which could be a downside to some teams because I don't know how well they can move him around. I think you have to play him in the slot if you're going to play him at the next level. But in general, he is a great wide receiver. Was the best of the wide receivers at Ohio State this year for me, and someone's going to get a really good pick out of him.
Yeah, it's crazy to say, considering that Jackson Smith and Nick Jigba is probably going to go top 10 next year. That was just an insane receiving core. Probably the best I've ever seen in college football in terms of talent at one time. Yes, I understand LSU has 2 superstars, but those 3, they were just so fun to watch. I don't know how anybody was going to be able to cover them. Moving to number 1, Drake London, 6'5", 210. The size he has is just insane. Coming out of USC, he was probably going to win the Blitnikoff before he got injured. Catching a touchdown, it was the second of the game in the first half. He broke his ankle on that play. He's as physical as they come. He's not just a 50-50 ball jump artist, but he's very tough after the catch. He played basketball, so he's got some toughness in him. He likes to bounce around off guys. Very good footwork. Playing basketball certainly helps with that. He mainly played in the slot for USC, but with that size, with that leaping ability, he can no doubt play outside. Of course, he's got long arms. That's another asset of his stature. He's not very quick off the line. It's not like he has blazing speed or anything, but he makes up for it in any other way imaginable when it comes to being a pass catcher.
Yeah, Drake London, like you said, 6'5", 210, former multi-sport athlete, played on the Trojans basketball team, very talented. I'm sure that's going to help NFL teams love to see that in the player. He can play slot. He can play outside. I honestly think that he might be better fit for the outside in the NFL if he gets some work on it. He's really creative when he runs his routes. It's a shame he got injured, like you said, because he was having a great season. He has outstanding ball skills, can really track a ball deep, and really make a great catch. Very, very, very rare on the drops. He has good enough football IQ. I'd like to see it maybe improve a little bit on the routes. But he's a big play threat whenever you throw the ball to him. He's a very talented player, and I think that he has a really good potential in the NFL. And there's definitely a reason why he's number 1 on this list for us.
Yeah, his physicality I think just stands out most. Though it takes sometimes 3-4 guys to bring him down in the open field because he's not really going to run away from many guys, but it's going to take a few guys to probably bring him down. I don't know how well that'll work in the NFL. Guys, much better tacklers at the pros, but he's certainly not going to make it easy on your secondary or linebackers, whoever's looking to tackle him on that specific play. I think his physicality is great, and that allows him to use that size and come down with 50-50 balls. So love watching Drake London play. It's going to be interesting to see where all these guys go. A lot of mock drafts have the Jets taking a receiver at 10. I'm not exactly on par with that, but very good group of receivers. I think you could potentially see 6 of them go in the first round. I think the back half of that first round we're going to really see after starting with number 18 with the Saints until the end of the first round. I think we're going to see a lot of these guys just come left and right off the board. So it should be fun to see what happens
Yeah, I think Dotson is a first round talent towards the back end of that draft. He's ranked 6, so that would put 5 guys in front of him. I think David Bell, maybe, who knows, he might even sneak into the first round if things get crazy and teams start taking wide receivers, especially if the Jets are looking to take a receiver. I don't think the Jets are going to go that way. I think they're going to go defense. But who knows? They may take a wide receiver, and that could change the board. I think out of all the top 6 guys we looked at, if you take any of them in the first round, towards the end of the first round, you're going to get a really good player there. I like Dotson. I like Burks a lot. Like I said, he's my favorite player out of these wide receivers. I think Jameson Williams is a really talented player. Just the injury concerns are there. But if he ends up in a good home like the Saints, things can go really well.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said there. I like this receiving class. I think we're going to see an abundance go in that first round. It should be a fun draft night for sure. It's going to wrap everything up for these rankings, guys. Nick, I appreciate you having you on. As always, this was fun.
Yeah,
That's
sounds good. Looking forward to doing a couple more of these.
Yes, sir. Of course. Plenty of draft content coming out. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment your favorite receiver in this class. See you next time.
Take care, guys.